The NFL draft is just a few short weeks away, and anticipation over who the Eagles will take at pick 21 is seriously snowballing. All the excitement pertains to the wide receiver position, and for good reason. But as we know, this class is stacked from top to bottom with pass-catching talent, so who truly is the best option for the Eagles? Not the best receiver, not the one with the highest upside, not the one with the most speed. Who fits the Eagles best? I mean, every name possible is being linked to the Eagles right now, and for a casual fan, it can be quite intimidating because there are so many names and so little time to get familiar with these players. It can be a little bit scary. So what I wanted to do was a different kind of ranking, and if you've been around this channel or phillysportsnetwork.com for a while, you know this isn't new. Last year I made an article and a video detailing my top running back options for the Eagles, where Miles Sanders ended up 4th place behind a couple of different guys, and we're going to do the same here. So I took all of the criteria that I think the Eagles would look for in a wide receiver, put them into a big super graph, and started watching 3 games each of the top 25 wide receivers in this class. What I was then left with was a top 20 ranking where you can sort by trait and see which sort of receiver the Eagles should be targeting, if there's any hidden value, some sleepers to keep an eye on, and who overall will be the best fit for this team. Now, before we get into it, I just wanted to say a massive thank you for the support on this channel. This sort of video and article I love doing. They do just take forever though, for obvious reasons. So if you could leave a like if you do enjoy it, and hit that subscribe button to stick around for more content, hit the bell for notifications, that will be absolutely brilliant. And just a heads up, apologies there wasn't a video yesterday, it was my birthday, so I wanted to actually, believe it or not, I took my first day off in about 2 years, so I'm refreshed, I'm ready to go. And to get your daily dose of Philadelphia sports coverage, make sure you go to phillysportsnetwork.com. Okay, so before we get into the receivers, we need to first work out what are the criteria we're looking at, because this isn't who's going to go the highest, who's going to be drafted first, who's the quickest, and that sort of thing. It's very much a culmination of what we see on tape. So we're forgetting stats, we're forgetting everything else, it's just the eye test in these certain metrics. And the first one is release. Is the receiver able to get off the line of scrimmage quickly when they're fighting press coverage? How's their hand usage? How's their footwork? Talking of that, the stem is the heart of the route for me, and this is going to include everything from the release up to the top of the route, and that includes braking, changing direction, which will obviously include an ability to sink and burst out of your cuts. Can you sell a vertical route with your head and your body language in order to get the defensive back to bite early and open his hips, therefore creating separation? Next up, speed. This one's self-explanatory, but it's focused on play speed and not a 40 time. So I don't care if you can run a 4.3 if you play like you run a 4.6. You have to incorporate the ability to change gears during a route. Can you accelerate and decelerate quickly? Ball skills, we're talking contested catches, strength at the catch point, catch radius, climbing up the ladder, and using your hands to catch as opposed to relying on your body. Adjustment, hey, we all know Carson Wentz makes his paydirt outside of the pocket, so expecting your wide receiver to adjust for his QB during a scramble drill is really, really important here. Finally, physicality, and this is so underrated. The Eagles do like wide receivers who can block in order to pave open the lanes for their dominant ground game. Physicality also includes play strength. Do they get swallowed at the line when facing press? Are they aggressive or conservative at the catch point? Each of these will get a mark out of 10, giving us one final score out of 60. Right, let's finally kick things off. Thanks for sticking around so far. It's important we lay the foundation because I want you guys to pick up as much knowledge and maybe even try this thing for yourself. Tier number 5, I've got 3 players. These are the lowest ranked ones. We're going to start with Isaiah Hodgins, Quintez Cephus, and Bryan Edwards. Now, Edwards, I feel, is a sleeper that seems to be capturing the hearts of many, and it's easy to see why. He's about as well-rounded as they come, and his ball production and adjustment skills are just a little bit ahead of Cephus, who I also really like. And both of these names should be available on day 3 if the Eagles decide to double down or simply want a budget option with a relatively high upside. I wasn't impressed with Isaiah Hodgins at all. I just don't see any kind of play speed to him. He's slow, he's groggy, got some relatively nice ball skills, he's fairly physical, but it's not what the Eagles are looking for, and that's why he grades so low. Whereas I think, at least with the other two, they're very, very similar in their release, in their stems. Like, you get a lot of the same traits out of there. I do think Bryan Edwards is a little bit better around the catch point. He does show off some of that catch radius in some of the games watched. But overall, two very, very similar receivers in that bottom tier that the Eagles could come away feeling fairly comfortable with for a developmental option. Hit number 4 is where things really get interesting, because I had 3 receivers graded out with a score of 41, and this is where the ranking kind of comes into its own, because yeah, they're all tied, but why are they tied? Like, someone like T. Higgins, who is being mocked in the 2nd round by some people, is obviously got a lot of upside, but does it fit what the Eagles are looking for? He's very much a catch radius machine, someone that's going to win those 50-50 balls. Think JJ Arcega-Whiteside, but he doesn't quite have the physicality, and because of his frame and that niche skill set, the other attributes that we're looking for, the speed and the release and that sort of thing, do take a knock. So he overall slips down a couple of tiers where he'd normally be ranked by other people, because he's not quite the receiver we're looking for. He slips below Davis and Duvernay there. Now, I've had a draft crush on Devin Duvernay for quite some time, but he's not perfect, and his stiffness as a route runner may come back to haunt him. This year's slot receiver class is absolutely exceptional, and we'll touch on a few of those names a little bit later. But if you're going to pass on guys like Hamlet and Ayuk and even Justin Jefferson, then I think both Davis and Duvernay could be fantastic mid-round options if the Eagles do go for an outside receiver early on, or even if it's just to bring some competition to Greg Ward Jr. Now, another name in this tier who may surprise you is Michael Pittman Jr., who also graded surprisingly low, but I think it's purely just because he doesn't have the juice that the Eagles covet. He's very fluent, very one speed in terms of his receiving prowess, and he's probably got one of the most extensive route trees in the class, but it just isn't that polished. He's a really well-rounded receiver, however, but again, this is based on traits the Eagles are searching for, not overall talent. Courtney Davis, however, is the latest. Hello, Travion Williams, I miss you. Aggie skill position player to steal my heart. If it's speed the Eagles covet over the middle, Davis is a ticking time bomb just waiting to go off. He's explosive over the line, saucy in his cuts, and is very nuanced as a route runner. I would love to see Davis picked up by the Eagles in the heart of this draft, but between him and Duvernay, it's basically a case of pick your poison. Would you rather someone who is more lethal off the line, more eccentric and open space in the way of Courtney Davis, or do you want someone who's a bit more of a willing blocker, someone that is a bit more aggressive at the catch point in Devin Duvernay, but does lack some of that route running prowess that the Texas A&M star had? Moving on to tier 3, and this is where the fun begins. So let's go from bottom to top. I know there's a lot of odd names in odd orders here, so let's work through it. Antonio Gandy Golden graded out for me at 42, tying with Laviska Shenault and of course Van Jefferson. Now those are 3 names you'd never normally group together, so give me a moment to explain. Gandy Golden blew everyone away at Senior Bowl practices, and his tape is just as impressive. But it is contextual, and there is a worry that there may be some bumps and bruises when transitioning to the NFL. But the raw traits are all there, and that's what we want to see on the film. AGG is the sort of player who could be an absolute steal in the draft because of this. If you really believe in Aaron Moorhead's ability to bring along that talent and let him shine, I think he could be a future slot weapon, maybe even Z receiver for the Philadelphia Eagles. On to the wild card here, and I know you're all going to be screaming at me in the comments for Shenault, but a lot of people view him as a 2nd round pick who does have some injury concerns, but none of that played into what I saw on tape. It's so frustrating, because the only knock on what is truly one of the most dynamic skill sets in the entire draft class is that he has some real concerns in terms of physicality. He just doesn't want to block. He has no interest in it whatsoever. He shies away from contact at the catch point and can get smothered as a result. If he even so much as tried to block or thrive through contact or drive someone next to him or use his body to shield the ball at the catch point, then he'd be a top tier 2 receiver in this ranking. He's got everything you could possibly want in a receiver, and his ball skills are among the best in this year's crop. I think the Eagles could absolutely be in for Shenault, and I would not be mad at all at the pick. I just wish so badly that his physicality was a little less lacking, because it could lead to drops down the line. But if we just average him out at, let's say, a 6, look at where that would send him. Far out and above tier number 3 and straight into the top of tier 2. So he's an incredibly talented receiver, just not a physical one. I love Van Jefferson. Our writer Thomas Peterson profiled him recently in an interview, and with a footballing pedigree in his family, it's easy to fall for such a crisp route runner. He's easily among the crispest runners in this class, and as well-rounded as you could possibly imagine. With the versatility to line up everywhere, the Florida product would be an absolute steal on day 2 if we're to go by these traits alone. John Hightower is this year's Andy Isabella for me, a player I fell hopelessly in love with within 1 game of tape. He's definitely a sleeper, but he just does everything well. Not exceptionally well, but well. And considering that he's likely a day 2 to 3 pick, to be graded this high says a lot, because in terms of having a jack of all trades, Hightower does everything. You could line him up anywhere and you're going to get production, and that's important for the Eagles, who they don't really know, if we're honest. If you're looking for a slot guy, if you're looking for a rotational piece next to Deshaun Jackson, if Jackson goes to the slot, is he your then Z receiver? You don't know, and I think Hightower would probably give you the best chance at ticking all of those answers at once, while also ticking none of them and allowing Peterson that flexibility to use his offensive personnel based on matchup. Brandon Ayuk is a fringe first rounder. Hey Adam Kaplan, how you doing? He's an electric playmaker and lethal in open space, but where he lacks is his route running and working through contact. I love his game, and he'd be a great slot option for the Eagles if, well, not for two men. Oh, KJ Hamler, you absolute enigma. How can one be so damn rapid, so explosive, so crisp in his routes, and then be so physically poor? It breaks my heart. He's everything the Eagles want in a receiver, but there were so many times during contested catches where he'd just accept defeat and shy away, or end up being thrown to the ground like a ragdoll when asked to block. And it reminds me, and I hate to say it, of Donnell Pumphrey 2.0. He will leave you purring in open space, and he's genuinely electric. So if he goes to the Eagles, he's going to get a creative coaching staff that will do just that. But it could just be so much more if for a little bit of that play strength. The choice between Ayuk and Hamler will come down to one thing. Do you want less speed and more physicality, or less physicality and more speed, with drops etc. being natural correlations, which has been a concern over Hamler's game, while Ayuk's hands are a little bit more secure. Tier 2, and it's getting saucy, 0.5. That is all that separates Mims from Reagor, with the latter leading the tier in grading. Why is that? Everyone's falling in love with Denzel Mims. The Eagles are reportedly in love with Denzel Mims, so why is he behind Jalen Reagor? Well, first of all, Mims may have the highest ceiling of any receiver in the draft. Alright, I'm not a Mims hater, I'm not a Mims doubter, I'm just honest with what I see, and I'm not going to overlook weaknesses because he's a great player, okay? He's got star written all over him if he lands with the right coaching staff, and those mitts should have an OnlyFans account, alright? His catch radius is unbelievable, but his route running technique is so far from perfect. I mean, it's to be expected. He's a big boy and he's never going to be a finesse runner, but there's no gear change when changing direction. He doesn't sink into cuts and burst out of them, and he ran go routes 43% of the time last year. If you watched a conference championship game against Parnell Motley from Oklahoma, you get a taste of how NFL corners will try to shut him down. Mims is ridiculous at the catch point, but he has to be, because most catches are contested, and that has to be noted. His route running is a weakness, and if you ignore it, you're just flat out overlooking something that the Eagles coaching staff would be expected to bring up. And are we really going to bank all in on Aaron Moorhead just yet? Bearing in mind the Eagles have had 4 years of 4 different wide receiving coaches. They need stability, and drafting Mims, in my opinion, is doubling down, saying, hey, Moorhead, make this investment work, alright? Bring this guy along and turn him into a star. If he does, fantastic. If not, it may be one of the biggest misses in history, because Mims has got absolutely elite potential. And that leads us to Reagor, who meanwhile has a lower ceiling but comes out of college with a higher floor, in my opinion. That route running is tremendous. He carries speed all the way through and is a threat at all 3 levels. The footwork is scintillating, and he understands the nuances needed to thrive at the NFL level. He tracks the ball well and is eyebrow raising at the catch point. The decision between the two comes down to one thing: the trust in the Eagles wide receiver coaching staff. If you're all in on Moorhead, Mims is your guy. If you want to hit the ground running, it's Jalen Reagor. And then just outside of those, a few points off, is Justin Jefferson, who in my opinion is the most complete slot receiver in this year's draft, period, point blank, full stop. Purely because he's got that aggressive mindset that some of the others lack. He's quick, eccentric, and fluent in his routes. Now, there is a concern that he hasn't faced much press coverage in his career, and I don't care if he faced it in Florida 2018. He struggled at times, okay? It could limit his ceiling. We don't know what it's going to look like. We should take the whole press coverage thing with a grain of salt. We have to evaluate what we see on tape, and what we see is someone that is rapid, that understands how to gain leverage and separation, that has an eccentric release, and more importantly, really, really safe hands. Arguably the safest in the class. Finally, the big three. Was there ever going to be a doubt that it would end with these three? CeeDee Lamb is my WR1, and it's not even close. It's crazy to think about just how good he's going to be at the next level. I mean, he throws people to the ground as a blocker, and if he's not doing that for my QB1, I'm not interested, okay? To go with that, he has ridiculous hops, an exceptionally clean route tree, and sprinting speed on his side for days as well. His tape is nothing short of mouth-watering. He is a human video game. If you could make a dream receiver in this draft class, it would be CeeDee Lamb. Now, the two interesting ones here are obviously Jerry Jeudy and Henry Ruggs, who are extremely similar with only minor differences between them. Ruggs is basically road runner and nobody's gonna match his speed, but in my opinion at least, Jeudy has an edge in the stem of his routes by being a little more physical. It's really splitting hairs, but Jeudy offers a fractionally more complete receiver, while Ruggs brings that Tyreek Hill level scary to the table. So, which receiver best fits the Eagles? I'm going to leave it down to you, because all I've done really is sort these guys into a table by trait. If you want to sort it by speed, then you're going to end with Henry Ruggs. If you want to sort it by release and through the stem, then you may end up with someone like a Jalen Reagor or a KJ Hamler for that matter. It's all perceptive, but I feel like this is a much more efficient way of reading wide receiver talent as opposed to looking at stats and metrics and how other people rank them, because the Eagles are going to be looking for certain things, and this is what those things will be, and hopefully this just opens your eyes to some of the names to watch out for, maybe a new sleeper along the way. But I want to know your thoughts down in the comments below, guys. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. I know it's a long one. I hope it has been worth the wait. From myself, Liam Jenkins, I will see you soon.